Hello and welcome to the Mindful Men podcast, a show helping men to open up about manhood. My name is Simon Rennie and my aim is to get men talking. From mental health to fatherhood and everything in between, Mindful Men creates a safe space for conversation. Now, before we get into this episode, I want to say a huge thank you for joining me. It means a world for you to join me and talk about men's issues. And if you love what you hear, please subscribe and share the episode with your mates. You can also join the conversation on Instagram and YouTube, and I'd love to connect with you there. But for now, sit back, relax, and let's get mindful. G'day guys, and welcome to episode 50 of the Mindful Men podcast. I'm your host, Simon Rennie, and today I'm just celebrating 50 episodes of the show. Who would have thought back in January 2022, I started recording my journey in mental health, from OCD and depression, anxiety, and what it's like to be a bloke experiencing mental illness. And from there, I've had amazing guests over the last 50 episodes. We've talked about a range of different things that impact men, from mental health to physical health and fitness, finances, OCD and depression and bipolar. I've had chats about addiction and trauma, childhood sexual abuse. I've talked about the healing power of dogs and social work and childbirth, psychology and what it's like to work in a prison. I've talked about stress and burnout and careers and how this all intertwines. I've talked about exercise-based therapy and counseling, business, and what it's like just navigating parenting. I've also had a chat with my son, Gus, and we shared that father-son moment where he can just share some of the things that make him tick. And through these conversations, I've met some amazing people, everyday people doing everyday things, but they've all got unique stories to tell, whether it's near-death experiences and finding mindfulness, or just recovering from mental illness or personal challenges. These aren't hugely famous people, but they've got huge stories to tell. I started the podcast to share stories and inspire men to open up about what's challenging them on the inside. I did this because I know how hard it is to talk. I didn't talk for 20 years. It's only been 10 years since I've started my recovery journey. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you to every listener, subscriber, and person who's rated the Mindful Men podcast. Thanks to everybody on social media who's liked or commented or shared a post that I've done. I really do appreciate every single one of you, and I hope that you can stick around for the next 50 episodes to come. Now, to celebrate this episode, I'm sharing 3 things that I'm grateful for. And then at the end, I'm going to share with you a great tool for practicing gratitude. The first thing I'm grateful for is the Mindful Men platform. Whether it's the podcast or social media or the networks that I'm creating through the Mindful Men therapy business, Mindful Men has opened up the door to so many possibilities. From helping men out one-to-one in therapy sessions and helping them grow and recover from trauma or hurt or pain or mental illness, to sharing the stories on the podcast and through the Instagram lives and the Facebook lives, and also the panels that I've been on and the men's summit that's coming up this December. It's through Mindful Men that I'm building a community of like-minded people. That's people who are passionate about men living their best life. It's about helping men to come out of autopilot and follow their dreams, to be the best dad they can be or best partner they can be, or just the best bloke that they can be. I really am grateful for where Mindful Men has come from and where it's going to go in the future. And what I particularly like about the Mindful Men community is that sense of community. Through conversations I'm having with people across the world, I'm seeing that despite being separated by land and sea, we've all shared very similar journeys in our lives. And through those journeys, we've all had shared challenges and triumphs and ways of healing as well. And by sharing all these varied experiences, my hope is to continue to inspire men to look inwards, become mindful of who they are and mindful of how they can grow. The second thing that I'm grateful for is actually starting a mental health discussion with myself. It's 2022, and 10 years ago, when I was 28, I finally walked into that GP's office and said, I think I have mental health issues. This stopped a 20-year silence on mental illness. I hadn't seen a doctor before. I hadn't spoken to a therapist before, and I'd never been on meds before. So I didn't actually know what was going on inside. Sure, I knew I kind of felt depressed, but I didn't actually know. It wasn't diagnosed. And this didn't happen until I walked into that doctor's office and I got a referral to a psychologist and I started opening up about all the things that I've been challenged with. And from there, I got the diagnosis of depression, anxiety, and obsessive compulsive disorder. And over the last 10 years, I've been on a journey of discovery, from therapy to medication to working out what self-care things actually work for me, but also the things that don't work for me. It's a continued process of discovery and trial and error. Some things work and other things don't, and that's okay. What I'm grateful for is just starting that conversation and continuing the conversation over time. And continuing is a key word here. Every time I talk, it gets that little bit easier. I'm able to go deeper inside and find what really has caused the pain and hurt that I've been experiencing. I'm able to go past the superficial and dive deep. And this comes from talking and being comfortable with talking. And now I'm so comfortable about talking that I've got the podcast and I'm sharing my story with the world. But it's also through my recovery process that I've found things like mindfulness, and that's at the center of Mindful Men. Mindfulness is a practice where we can overcome things like anxiety and stress, but we can also ground ourselves in the moment using our five senses and come back down to earth when we're thinking about all the things that really don't matter. But it's also about being mindful of who we are. It's that insight, it's that willingness to critically reflect on ourselves and go, you know what? How I'm showing up isn't quite working for me. And it's not quite working for those around me. And then it's committing to a process of change, because nothing changes if nothing changes. And this is what talking does. It helps us to reflect on this. It helps us to identify this, and it helps us to see new perspectives of the world in the friends and the family and the therapists that we talk to. And the third thing I'm grateful for is being in a position where I can help other blokes to work through their mental health issues. I've got 30 years lived experience of mental illness, so I know what it's like to feel like shit. I know what it's like to trial different medications. I know what it's like to go to talk therapy. I know what it's like to go through cognitive behavioral therapy or exposure response therapy or narrative therapy. I know all these things because I've been there and I've done it. I've bottled things up. I've cried. I've expressed anger and confusion and utter dismay. But I've got through it all, and I continue to work on myself every single day. And through this lived experience, I've also got learned experience. I've completed my Masters of Social Work, and I have a real drive and a real passion to helping men with their mental health. That's why I created Mindful Men, the therapy business. I work with guys one-to-one, and in 2023, I'm looking at group work too. But one-to-one is a great space because it's safe, it's confidential, and it's private. And it really does enable guys to open up about everything and anything. They can break down the brick walls that they've built around themselves as a means of keeping themselves safe. They can break them down, shatter them, come out of the box, however they describe being locked away in a mental health issue. And from there, I can help them rebuild through a recovery process. We can set new foundations based on values and goals that are based on those values. We can reconnect them with their identity. And we can also help them live the life that they've always wanted to live, not the one that they've been living on autopilot. And from this lived and learned experience, I can make a real impact on men's lives. And what I love about the therapy process is seeing guys look inwards and critically reflect and see them willing to turn off the autopilot and live a meaningful life. But most importantly, what I love seeing is them not giving up, Sure, they might say the words that they feel like giving up, or their life's not worth living, or they don't know what to live for. But through a process of talking and reflecting and goal setting and tools and tips that I give them along the way, we can start to shift the dialogue to identify the things that they're looking forward to and that they can do, to their strengths and resilience factors rather than their vulnerabilities, but also accepting their vulnerabilities as a show of strength and reinforcing that it's not weak to speak, that it's actually healthy for guys to open up and talk about things, because when they don't, well, we all know the statistics. 75% of Australians who die by suicide are male. And 75% of victims of family and domestic violence report that their perpetrators are also male. This data set tells me that we have struggled to open up. We've struggled to process things and release our emotions in a healthy way. And this is where I come in at Mindful Men. I can help you guys out there do that in a healthy and constructive way. So, in thinking about these three things that I'm grateful for, the Mindful Men podcast and the social media platforms, me walking into that doctor's office 10 years ago to talk about mental illness, and me being in a position now to help guys through a lived and learned experience of mental illness and help them recover too, here's one great tip I've got to help you practice gratitude better. Throw out the whole gratitude journals. You don't need them. You don't need to think of the three big things each day that you're grateful for. It doesn't work. And trust me, I know, I've tried it. It's boring. Every day you tend to regurgitate the same three things. And so many people tell me this. What you actually need to do is just think about your day in hourly time slots. From the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, think of all the things you did each and every hour. So, for example, 6 to 7 a.m. in the morning, you might have got up out of bed, had a coffee, had a shower, had some breakfast. 7 to 8, it might have been getting the kids ready for school and off to school. 9 to 10, it could have been a coffee with a work colleague or a friend or a family member. At lunchtime, you might have gone out for a nice lunch down by the beach. Between 3 and 4 p.m., you might have had a really good constructive meeting with a client. Between 7 and 8, you might have had some great homework time with the kids, or you might have all sat down and watched a family show together before bed. When we look at our day in these hourly chunks, we can see the everyday things that we often just overlook. And it's here that we can find the things that we're really grateful for every single day, and they never seem to be the same. It could be that 9 o'clock coffee with a friend, family, or colleague, or it could be that lunchtime meal down by the beach. Or maybe it was that half an hour moment between 3:30 and 4 o'clock where you got to sat down and read a book. These are the things that we look for when we practice gratitude. It's the everyday small things that actually fill us with joy. And when we start to identify these small things that fill us with joy, we tend to do them more often. And then we start to flip the discourse as well around things being challenging or tiring or exhausting. And you can go, well, actually, I did some pretty cool things today. I did some things that made me feel good. That's the purpose of practicing gratitude, is finding those small things and running with them. Now, before I go, another huge thanks to everybody who's come along the ride for the last 50 episodes of the Mindful Men podcast. I really do appreciate every single one of you. Now, I need your help. And there's a few things that you can do to help me out. One, I need more blokes into therapy. Why? Because I know so many blokes are out there hurting, but they're just not willing to ask for help. But tell them it's easy. Tell them to go to my website. It's www.mindful-men.com.au. Check out my services and then give me a call or send me an email. It is that easy. I've even got capacity before Christmas to see people in Australia. And that's including people across Australia, because I got telehealth, so you can do it from the comfort of your home. All you need is a phone or a laptop, and you can have a chat with me and get into some therapy. Plus, also, if you're on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, I can see you face to face. The second thing is spreading the Mindful Men word through the social media and podcast platforms. As for podcasts, if you can do one thing for me today, it's to jump onto Spotify and jump onto Apple Podcasts and leave the show a 5-star rating. The higher the rankings, it's more likely other blokes are going to come across the show. The same goes for YouTube. jump onto YouTube, subscribe to the show. It's for free. And make sure you hit that notification bell so each episode drop comes into your inbox. And this is a great tool because you get to see me having conversations with people across the world. And if you're on the fence about therapy, you can see me talking and what I talk about and the passion that I have before you even pick up the phone or send me an email. So please subscribe to the Mindful Men YouTube channel, share it with your friends, help it get to more eyes and ears of people around the world. And lastly, it's about sharing the Mindful Men social media platforms. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, we're all over those platforms. So make sure you're liking posts, that you're commenting on posts, that you're sharing it with your mates, that you're saving posts for later. And talk to me as well. Send me a DM. I'd love to hear from you about what makes you tick, what you want to see, and what's making you think about different things in a different way. So there's some things that you can do to help me as well with Mindful Men, because I want to grow this platform. I want to make it big. I want to make it huge. I want so many men around the world to go, yes, I'm not alone. There's people in the Mindful Men community that get me, that understand me, that have been through what I've been through. And if you're in Australia, you can maybe engage with me through some therapy. I'd love that. Well, that's it, guys. Thanks so much for joining me on this episode 50 of the Mindful Men podcast. We've touched on a whole bunch of things around gratitude, but also how you can help me to grow Mindful Men further and help more men get into therapy. If you're really enjoying the show and you'd love to hear some different types of topics, or you want me to try and engage with certain type of guests, please send me a message on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and I'll see what I can do. But until next time, stay mindful. Well, that's a wrap for today's episode, and I hope you got some value from it. If anything triggered your mental health today, please reach out to your support networks. Also, if you loved what you heard, be sure to subscribe to the show and share it with your mates. For more from Mindful Men, you can check us out on Instagram and YouTube, and I'll throw the links to these pages in the show notes below. But until next time, stay mindful.